Hope you find him. Love that dog.
You don't love anything, Mr. Udall.
Okay.
In this video, we will begin again exploring the very logical and calculating Uttara Phalguni nakshatra by understanding better how these elements reflect themselves in men. In the female Uttara Phalguni video, we saw how having a more logical approach to life and romance was of great benefit to women, who oftentimes tend towards a more emotional, intuitive, and at worst neurotic style of being and decision making. Uttara Phalguni blesses women with a more developed animus, or in other words, it blesses women with a more developed male consciousness so that they can understand the subconscious male half of their psyche and better integrate it within themselves. For the Uttara Phalguni woman, the emotional nature of women is supplemented greatly by the stillness, the firmness, and the general stability of the Uttara Phalguni asterism. But men as a collective are already thought of as less in touch with their emotions and struggling to articulate or even understand them. So in this video, we will explore how the already emotionally distant male body and male consciousness is affected by the also emotionally distant and emotionally neutral nature of the Uttara Phalguni lunar mansion. Since this nakshatra is already so masculine, it is very much divorced from its anima, or in other words, it is very much separated from the subconscious female half of its consciousness. What we will study in these videos is also the state of the soul when it is fallen, as a disconnection from feeling and love is also a disconnect from the soul. What happens to man when he loses touch with his center of light and power, and in this case, how the feminine can both further victimize him and yet also rescue him.
Because you're soulless. Sad.
What we will observe throughout this video are instances of callousness, emotional coldness, and general emotional ignorance, but we will try to contextualize this behavior and also show common paths of improvements. For the Uttara Phalguni woman's video, we saw that a common role she plays is that of Lady Macbeth, making use of both her femininity and calculation to advance her partner. In this video, we will find that the Uttara Phalguni male often portrays a Scrooge-type character, starting with the very movie Scrooge, starring Bill Murray.
Grace, who is that guy?
Elliot, Loudermilk.
Okay. Call security, have them change his locks, clean out his desk, and toss him out of the building.
Whoa, he's fired? But it's Christmas.
Thank you. Call accounting, stop his bonus.
In this movie, Bill Murray portrays an arrogant, dismissive boss who abuses his power and lacks complete empathy for his employees. He lacks complete perspective into other people's minds and feelings, and operates not only in ignorance, but in total indifference to their suffering and tribulations, especially if they get in the way of his goals.
Get out of here!
You called me.
Who are you, anyway? You little worm. Who are you? How'd you get in here? Well, maybe you'll answer some questions downtown, huh, my friend?
What the hell is going on? This is my little boy.
All right, you beat him. Does he work here?
No, he does not. I thought it would be fun for him to see a live television show.
You see anybody having fun here?
Grace, I need a full report on a guy named Bryce Cummings. He's an LA slimeball.
Okay, you're due at Helmsley Palace at 7 o'clock, and I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna take my son.
No, you're not. You're staying here with me. We're working late.
I have to take my son to the doctor.
Grace, when I work late, you work late.
But I made the appointment 2 months ago.
I care. We're indivisible. If I'm working late, you gotta work late. If you can't work late, I can't work late. If I can't work late, I can't work late.
Then we have the movie Spirited, starring Uttara Phalguni native Ryan Reynolds, who essentially plays Scrooge in this Christmas movie.
Fabricated a scandal.
I didn't fabricate, I suggested a scandal that the public and the media ran with, and it's going to get our client elected.
Destroy that woman's life.
We talked about these tactics. No, I'm not going to land on my feet, Dan. I'm going to land on you. When I take all of your clients with me,
You have a non-compete clause.
which you will not enforce because you so fear what I can do using these tactics, which are so beneath you.
Clear off!
disgusting.
We have the animated movie Scrooge, A Christmas Carol, starring Uttara Phalguni ascendant Luke Evans.
Excuse me, sir, but it's almost 6. 6 o'clock. Could I trouble you for my wages, please?
5, 10, 15 shillings.
Thank you, sir.
Take away 5.
But I'm owed 15.
Consider the other 5 your payment to me.
For what, sir?
The ink, of course. And the day off you insist on taking tomorrow.
Sir, this isn't enough. My family, you see, my children, my boy needs medicine.
You have children? Of course you do. Cratchit, times are hard, and my financial burdens are considerable. Now, should I add to them by paying for the upkeep of your entire family?
We also have a woman playing the Scrooge character in the movie Miss Scrooge, with the Uttara Phalguni native Cicely Tyson, who plays Scrooge, a cynical miser who values pennies over people's lives.
We will not leave our home. You.
I believe landlord is the word you're searching for. I need a week to repay for the next tenant.
Miss Scrooge, I know we've been behind in the rent this month, but Ward has got bronchitis. If you would just let us stay till the first of the year, we would pay by the day.
You mean rent by the day? Well, $100 a day. How does that suit you?
Miss Scrooge, that's almost $1,000.
Rental by the day is always expensive. It's a business principle.
Who are you to talk about principles?
Ward, there's no use talking to her. Some women just don't have a feeling heart.
You will roast one day, Ebenezer Scrooge.
Well, if I do, Mr. Baldwin, you can be sure I will own the property.
Whereas the women of Uttara Phalguni maintain some balance between the intellect and feeling, the men of Uttara Phalguni often tend towards a disequilibrium, valuing the intellect over feeling, to such an extent that they are divorced from their own soul. One way of exploring this is through the planet Sun, which is associated with Uttara Phalguni in 2 important ways. Firstly, through its deity Aryaman, and secondly, through the Vimshotri planetary lords. Now, in some ways, Aryaman can be considered the most solar of the Adityas because it represents the sun at its highest and hottest. Aryaman, according to certain sources, represents the midday sun, the brightest disk of the day. This position emphasizes the masculinity of this particular Aditya and also goes to explain why even the women of Uttara Phalguni, as we explored before, have such a developed anima or masculine side that helps them understand and manage male nature. The other Adityas represent the sun in ways that do not emphasize masculinity, but instead speak of special ways of perceiving reality. For instance, Varuna represents the midnight sun or utter darkness, suggesting that Shadabisha natives are very good at perceiving what is hidden from view, and they themselves conceal their identity and operate in darkness. Savitri represents the twilight sun, as it is just rising or just setting. So it is one eye into the invisible world and one eye into the visible worlds. And Hasta, of course, is a fluid nakshatra that represents the studying of the subconscious mind and how that reflects itself externally, as well as being connected to magic and symbolism. The sun is said to rule over Uttara Phalguni nakshatra and is a planet that represents outwardly directed awareness. It is separate from the moon, which represents inwardly directed awareness. Both these planets represent light and awareness, but only the moon is really connected to self-awareness, since it is inwardly directed and of course represents the anima within men. The Uttara Phalguni male is often depicted as separated from, ignorant, and dismissive of his anima or emotional and intuitive side. Uttara Phalguni is a marriage nakshatra and represents the ideal partner, the ideal half to be completed to the opposite. The Uttara Phalguni male then represents the ideal male consciousness, which is logical, direct, and emotionally neutral. To be completed, it requires a marriage with a half that is intuitive, emotional, fluid, and dark. Let us continue to study the examples of Uttara Phalguni male that embody the cold, logical half of the male consciousness that is currently divorced from its more fluid and empathetic side. Having discussed a few movies where the Uttara Phalguni native literally plays Scrooge, there are other Scrooge-like characters that the Uttara Phalguni native portrays as well. What we have seen and will continue to see in Uttara Phalguni is a consciousness totally separated from its female half, which is emotional in nature, leaving them totally dependent on their logical and intellectual side.
You're fired.
Oh, you can't fire Mike.
You moron. You can't even get your firing right.
You may be a good junior partner, but you got a long way to go as a human being.
I'm fired?
Louis, come on.
Pack up your things and go, now.
But I did everything you asked. I delivered the Carrillo contract.
I don't care. The client fired us, and now I'm firing you. Times are tough, people. You can't afford mistakes. We can't afford incompetence. You can't cut it. Get out. There is no place for mediocrity here at Pearson Hardman, and there's certainly no place for someone like you.
How do you write women so well?
I think of a man, and I take away reason and accountability.
Jack Nicholson plays an older man who is essentially disconnected from his emotional side, is grumpy and cynical. In the opening scene, we witness an instance of his callousness when he takes his neighbor's dog and slides him down the garbage disposal simply because he feels inconvenienced by his existence, his barking and occasional peeing in the halls.
Frank Sachs, Melvin Udall.
How you doing?
Frank shows my work, Mr. Udall. I think you know that.
People are going to start coming.
What I
Please.
know is as long as you keep your work zipped up around me, I don't give a rat crap what or where you shove your show. Are we done being neighbors for now?
Let me talk to you.
No. Not worth it. Definitely not worth it for Del must be in the apartment.
We witness his callousness further in a restaurant scene where he makes a flippant comment about the son of a waitress who is diagnosed with a fatal illness and whose probability of living is low.
You're gonna die soon with that diet, you know that.
Well, we're all gonna die soon. I will, you will, and it sure sounds like your son will.
If you ever mention my son again, you will never be able to eat here again. Do you understand?
He is collectively viewed as so contemptible that when the owner of the restaurant he frequents decides to kick him out, the rest of the patrons erupt in joyous vindication, as they had gained a reputation of a Scrooge-like terror in their local community.
I'm not a prick. You are. I'm not judging. I'm a great customer. This day has been a disaster. I'm not sure if I can handle this too.
Get out. Get out immediately or there's gonna be trouble. Man, I mean it.
Mel Gibson is another Uttara Phalguni native that stars in the movie What Women Want, which can serve as another Scrooge-type character. A man who has absolutely no connection to his emotional side and thus causes harm to the women around him, who he uses and discards for sexual purposes and is overall cynical regarding romantic matters.
You ever consider dating a woman who wears real underwear? You know, the kind that covers the entire bottom the way it's supposed to.
No, but if I ever do, should I give you a call? Hey, do you know the difference between a wife and a job?
What is it?
After 10 years, the job still sucks. It's a good one, huh?
Do you ever wonder why people dislike you so much? It's because you are sly and oily and smug.
Rob James Collier is yet another Uttara Phalguni native who stars as Thomas Barrow in the series Downton Abbey, who is yet another Scrooge-like character who is portrayed as cynical and sarcastic.
Is Daisy going to the fair tonight with the others? Why don't you ask her? She needs taking out of herself. Daisy, I was hoping
Would you like to go to the fair with me, Daisy? There's a few of us going later on.
Do you mean it?
You bust.
Again, disconnected from his emotional side, hardened and rigid, he is a character who even plots against the other members of the house. He too is collectively disliked and in many ways described as soulless.
How can I help you, Governor?
Some dirtbag from the Attorney General's office has dared to mention the word jail.
Somebody call the ambulance.
What did you say?
Bruce Willis stars himself as a Scrooge-like character in the movie The Kid, where he is portrayed as well as cynical, sardonic, cruel, and calculating, again totally disconnected from his heart and from his emotional center.
Look. Isn't it lovely? It's big, it's beautiful, it's revolving around the Earth, proving once again that the universe does not revolve around you.
I want to show you something. Tell me if you think this is cute.
Oh, look at the moon. It's so big and round, and when I look at it, I'm all perky and excited, and no one would ever know that I'm almost 30. Woohoo!
What do you think? Cute or just stupid?
Just when I think I've seen the worst, that there's no possible way you could be more of a jerk, you outdo yourself.
In the Scrooge movies and others, we often find that the Uttara Phalguni men experience mystical visitation from spirits and other mystical experiences. So why do these spirits make themselves fully manifest to the Uttara Phalguni male? There are several interpretations of this. A more mystical way of interpreting these spiritual visitations is the following. Uttara Phalguni not only represents the fruits of marriage, but it also represents the accumulated good merits owing to various past life deeds. Uttara Phalguni's deity is also said to be the foremost of the ancestors and is honored as the most dignified spirit of the dead. Uttara Phalguni is a nakshatra that is highly blessed and highly protected by the spirits of the dead and ancestors owing to their honorable general behavior in their previous lives.
Your redemption, then. You see, an old friend of yours asked me to illuminate a thing or two for you.
Illuminate what, exactly?
I was just getting to that.
What is it? What is it?
I'm again so sorry. So out of all the people on the planet, murderers, racists, people who do gender reveal parties, I'm the guy you're gonna haunt.
If you would shut up and let me finish, you might understand.
Yes, sir.
You know what? Forget it. It's not worth the trouble. 3 ghosts coming to save you. Bit more consideration for them than you did for me, maybe. Yeah.
Noted.
Good. All right then, cheers.
Look at your future. Now, if you don't change your ways, you're gonna wind up doomed, just as I am. Now, it's too late for me, but it's not for you. You can be saved. You are going to be visited by 3 ghosts.
For this reason, when the spirits of the dead or when celestial forces perceive the Uttara Phalguni male is going in the wrong direction in life or is otherwise in danger, it is their blessing and protection that alerts them of any danger they are in or evil that they are committing that threatens to destroy them and their good spiritual standing. And so it can be said that the Uttara Phalguni native has himself earned the right to these spiritual visitations because they had previously gratified these same spiritual forces in the past who now feel indebted or obligated to assist them in these great trials. Though Maga is specifically related to ancestor veneration, Uttara Phalguni is the most beloved of the ancestors, or rather, the most beloved of the descendants. And for this reason, the natives tend to be blessed with a lot of respect, intelligence, popularity, and even attractiveness.
You're an hallucination brought on by alcohol, Russian vodka poisoned by Chernobyl.
Another way to interpret these spirits are as hallucinations. The human consciousness is comprised of the intellectual and logical side, as well as the intuitive and emotional side. But the Uttara Phalguni male is, again, oftentimes operating either in complete ignorance of his emotional side or acts dismissively towards it. By suppressing and silencing this other half of themselves for so long, eventually the emotional side may rebel against him, climb on top of him, and assault him with dreams and visions and hallucinations that he struggles to understand and decipher, for he has spent so much of his life disinterested in learning the language of emotion and of symbolism. So it is the emotional and intuitive aspect of his consciousness that is desperately trying to communicate with him, no longer employing gentle whispers as it does for the regular person who may be more in touch with themselves, but instead employing increasingly more aggressive means of communication as a way of calling the Uttara Phalguni male's attention. Owing to the level of sensitivity that regular people have to their emotional side, regular people do not need to be haunted by strange visions in order to understand that they are infringing against their own soul. But for the Uttara Phalguni male who may lack self-awareness of his emotional side, his anima, his subconscious, is forced to leap out of him in front of him and attack him with odd experiences just to call his attention. We can even go into another phenomenon often observed in Uttara Phalguni males, and that is panic attacks. As in this context, panic attacks are another psychosomatic way that the soul, the emotional center, or otherworldly beings aggressively communicates to the Uttara Phalguni consciousness by fully possessing him in order that he recognize their existence and finally start to listen to them. This is again the feminine aspect of their consciousness slithering from under him and climbing on top of him to dominate him at irregular intervals. The repressed anima finally climbs on top.
Alright, the night he got pinched, I had a fucking panic attack, alright? From my mother, goddammit. I didn't even know what it was then.
Alright, just relax. Focus on your breathing.
Now, what is interesting is that many movies and television programs that have centered panic attacks in their plot often have an Uttara Phalguni or even Uttarashada male as the center. Famously, we have Uttara Phalguni native James Gandolfini as Tony Soprano in the television show Sopranos, who has suffered from several severe panic attacks. These panic attacks can be interpreted as rejected aspects of their consciousness that finally have decided to rebel against him and have taken over his body. This is as a means of calling his attention or paralyzing him if he refuses to finally listen to them. Tony Soprano himself struggles with his emotions and struggles to understand them, making him susceptible to such attacks. He suffers from these assaults of his consciousness because for too long he has gone without understanding his anima or his female half. We find several other notable Uttara Phalguni examples in the media of men whose panic attacks as well as other psychological conditions have served as important parts of the plot.
Try to breathe. I can't. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry.
Okay, you're having a panic attack. Just breathe.
In the television series Ted Lasso, we find the Uttara Phalguni native Jason Sudeikis suffering from panic attacks. Mental health or the lack of mental health seems to be a common trope in many Uttara Phalguni films and series. As in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, we find the Uttara Phalguni native Jack Nicholson suspected of being insane. Another Jack Nicholson movie is, again, As Good as It Gets, that shows a man who is OCD about various things, like his hygiene for instance. There's a bathroom scene where we find he has stocked various soaps, which he only uses once then throws away. In another scene we find he brings his own utensils to his favorite restaurants. In another scene we find him skipping and hopping on the sidewalk so as to not step on a crack. His being disconnected from his emotional side, his repressing his emotional side, eventually causes his emotional side to rebel against him and assault him with insanity.
What do you think I should do?
Well, you can't go back to work. Can't stay here either. I think it's time to see if the cat knows what he's talking about.
She's right. I totally agree.
Well, me out of that. Just to go around killing people? I like people.
Aye. Fuck the dog. Do it for the pleasure it brings. Come on, Jerry. We'll get a bigger fridge.
There's the movie What About Bob, starring the Uttara Phalguni native Bill Murray, where again we find a man who is so ignorant of his emotional side that he is debilitated by it, as he suffers from various mental health conditions.
Have you ever heard of Tourette's syndrome? Mm-hmm. Involuntarily shouting profanity?
It's exceptionally rare.
Shit-eating son of a bitch! Bastard! Douchebag! Twat! Numbnuts! Dickhead! Bitch!
If I fake it, then I don't have it.
Another example of a panic attack comes by the way of the series Suits, but this time it is an Uttarashada native, one who is again emotionally cold and callous, and who often infringes upon his own emotions, saying things and doing things that he does not realize his own soul will punish him for. And again, in this instance, it is through panic attacks that his soul attacks him and retaliates for his actions.
Okay, I'm dialing 911.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. You could be having a heart attack.
It's not a heart attack.
You don't know that.
It's a panic attack.
In the movie Liar Liar, we find an example of an Uttarashada native, Jim Carrey, In this movie, we find yet another Scrooge-like character who has built a life and a career through complete dishonesty and moral bankruptcy. And though there may be various interpretations of the film, one that connects it to this current essay is again the rebellion of the soul against the actions of the body. The anima and her wildness slithering from under him, slithering from under his control, and sitting on top of him and assaulting him with insanity. Your regular person is emotionally aware enough that when they perform an evil action and their soul begins to weep, they are sensitive to her wailings and contemplate reassessing their actions and habits and way of life. But at his worst, the Uttara Phalguni male can lack so much emotional sensitivity and can be so deaf to the wailings of his soul that she, tortured and suffocated, rejected and angry, is left no choice than to wrestle his consciousness for complete control, which again we see here manifest as panic attacks and other mental health disorders.
Are you married?
I'm divorced. There are two types of people in this world. Those who like Neil Diamond and those who don't.
So, what you're saying is that even though you are an almost paralyzed, multiphobic personality that is in a constant state of panic, your wife did not leave you, you left her because she liked Neil Diamond.
Now, you're saying that maybe I didn't leave her because she likes Neil Diamond, but maybe she left me?
Yes.
Ow. Ow!
Because the Uttara Phalguni struggles to understand his own emotions as he lives much of his life willfully ignoring them, when his inner emotional realities become psychosomatic, whether by panic attacks, hallucinations, or other mental conditions, we find that they reluctantly seek out the help of a therapist. This is another very prominent trope in the films and television series of Uttara Phalguni men.
Mr. Soprano?
Yeah.
The strong, silent, masculine men seeking out the assistance of a psychologist, a professional whose job it is to navigate the dark, murky waters of the subconscious and to give her a voice. In the series The Sopranos, we find a famous example of this with the Uttara Phalguni native James Gandolfini, who is a dangerous and infamous mob boss that secretly seeks out the assistance of a psychologist without the members of his mafia knowing.
Oh, I lied. What am I going to tell him? What am I going to tell all of them? I had a fight with my mother and I fainted. That's why I missed the job.
Lest he lose their respects. In the movie As Good as It Gets, we find again the Uttara Phalguni native Jack Nicholson consulting a psychologist for his mental issues.
Hi. Help! If you want to see me, you will not do this. You will make an appointment.
Dr. Green, how can you diagnose someone as an obsessive-compulsive disorder and then act as though I had some choice about barging in?
There's not going to be a debate. You must...
You said you could help me. What was that? A tease?
In the series Ted Lasso, there's a relationship that starts off rather tumultuous between Ted and his psychologist.
What do you want to talk about?
Why don't you tell me what happened the other night?
Yeah, I don't want to do this.
So, is this your first time doing therapy?
No, ma'am. My wife and I did couples therapy for a little while.
How was that?
Well, let's see. I'm here in London, and my wife is back in Kansas, which is a good thing, because if she heard me referring to her as my wife still, she'd be hopping mad.
I take it you're not a fan of this kind of work.
No, ma'am.
Why is that, do you think?
Because I think it's bullshit.
Let me tell you something. I had a semester and a half of college, so I understand Freud. I understand therapy as a concept. But in my world, it does not go down. Could I be happier? Yeah. Who couldn't?
In the series Suits, not only do we find the Uttarashara native Gabriel Mack consulting a psychologist for his panic attacks, but later in the series we find him joined by the Uttara Phalguni native Rick Hoffman, who decide to go into therapy together to solve their friendship issues.
Tell him to stop.
He's being honest about his feelings, Louis.
What about your feelings about whose fault this whole thing was?
What? Louis. I should have known you just wanted to get me in here to have him tell me this is my fault.
It is your fault.
Louis, we are not here to discuss fault.
Well, then why the hell are we here?
Of course, in the movie What About Bob, Bill Murray goes to a psychologist. In the movie The Kid, Bruce Willis, another Uttara Phalguni native, goes to a psychologist.
For the last few weeks, I have been seeing a guy in a plane.
Oh, I see.
Not that kind of seeing. I mean, I've been hallucinating a guy in a plane.
In the series Lethal Weapon, Clayne Crawford, Uttara Phalguni native, also frequents a psychologist.
Why do you think your father called? Why do you think he reached out?
Doc, he wants me to come see him.
How did you respond?
I hung up.
Oh, what do you want to hear, man? Do you want to hear that sometimes I think about eating a bullet? Huh? Well, I do. I do. I even got a special one for the occasion with a hollow point. Look, make sure it blows the back of my goddamn head out. Do the job right. Every single day I wake up and I think of a reason not to do it. Every single day. You shouldn't tempt me, man. Put it in your mouth. Bullet might go through your ear, not kill you. Yeah, under the chin. Yeah, under the chin. Ow! You're not trying to draw a psycho pension. You really are crazy.
In the movie The Voices, starring the Uttara Phalguni native Ryan Reynolds, we find that he visits a psychologist as well.
Any side effects with the meds?
I don't know.
Are you taking them?
I don't know.
You have to take them. Do you ever hear voices?
Voices? No. I mean...
It's okay, Bosco. Pretty bad situation, buddy. I know. Maybe the best thing to do is just, go to the cops and explain everything.
You go to the cops and you say, hey man, I accidentally stabbed that English chick. Oh. You think they'll all nod and understand the way your stupid dog does?
Dr. Perkins.
Yes?
You may not remember me. I'm Nick Marshall. I came here about 10 years ago with my ex-wife, Gigi.
Oh, Christ, not him.
In the movie What Women Want, Mel Gibson visits a psychologist, and also in the movie The Beaver, we find that Mel Gibson is aggravated by very deep and very confusing mental health issues that he struggles to understand and struggles to solve. And at one point, he did visit a psychologist, but now he has resigned to using a hand puppet to understand his own feelings.
It's quite an obituary you're working out for yourself. Hey, Walter. Wake up. Wake up, you worthless sod. Bloody hell. Look at you. Stone drunk and flattened by a television. Because I'm the only one what knows how you really feel. Everybody needs a friend, Walter. And you've got me.
I would like to go into more detail regarding the movie The Beaver, and why it is that this particular Uttara Phalguni native has clung so much to a hand puppet to communicate his feelings. For this, I will use the symbolism of the sun to explain this phenomenon. Once again, the sun and the moon are planets of light, and therefore both are planets of awareness, but the difference is the sun projects its light outwardly, and so is mostly aware of that which is outside of itself, and often can be ignorant of what is inside of itself. The moon, on the other hand, is aware of internal realities, both its own internal reality and also the internal reality of other people. Very solar individuals may struggle to literally perceive themselves and may find their own inner world very difficult to navigate, and many Uttara Phalguni natives may actually resonate with hand puppets as a psychological tool.
It's been a long time since I've had a talk with my daughter.
Oh, Daddy, not here!
Anna!
The basic idea behind this is, it is easier to project one's own emotions on a puppet, or even animate the puppet to speak, than it is to assume one's own emotions.
Read the card. Read the card.
The person who handed you this card is under the care of a prescription puppet, designed to help create a psychological distance between himself and the negative aspects of his personality. Please treat him as you normally would, but address yourself to the puppet. Thank you.
Since they are so divorced from their feeling nature, And since they already perceive their feeling nature as something that is separate from them, a hand puppet can serve to fully animate that rejected aspect of their consciousness that they can then interact with directly. Something else about Uttara Phalguni natives is that they tend to have a very fixed and very stubborn self-image or self-concept. Those with very fixed self-concepts tend to not like to subject themselves to experiences that threaten their self-concept. And so they may not enjoy self-investigation or self-analysis too much, lest through this process they discover truths about themselves that destroy their self-image.
My understanding from Dr. Cusimano, your family physician, is that you collapsed, possibly a panic attack. You were unable to breathe.
They said it was a panic attack.
You okay?
Yeah. Go on with what you were saying.
Are you having an attack now?
No. I had a huge lunch, that's all. It's gas. And they sent me here.
You don't agree that you had a panic attack?
You of all people should know that a person can overreact when they're hurt.
If you're referring to me, I do not overreact.
Okay, whatever you say, fatty baldy.
Okay, get the hell out of my office and... Fine, you have a small legitimate point.
Look, I don't want therapy. I don't need therapy.
Why do you feel that way?
Because I'm not like the other nutballs that roll through here, okay?
Sometimes I resent you making me a victim. That's all.
I make you feel like a victim.
Yeah. Remember the first time I came here? I said, the kind of man I admire is Gary Cooper, the strong, silent type. And how all Americans, all they're doing is crying and confessing and complaining. A bunch of fucking pussies. Fuck them.
You're angry.
No, I don't get angry.
Well, you're upset.
I don't get upset.
And now I'm one of them, a patient.
Your parents made it impossible for you to experience joy.
Yeah, see? There you go again.
You said yourself you're not the happy wanderer.
Well, I'm more like one of those assholes than I am the fucking jerk-offs and douchebags I see leaving this office.
Bob Wiley is a very sensitive person.
Your father's sensitive.
Bob listens to people.
Your father listens to people, except when he's up here in Lake Winnipesaukee. Oh, I can't believe that I'm hearing this.
Relax, Leo.
I'm relaxed.
Take a vacation.
I'm on vacation.
Maybe you should check in here for a few days. Get a handle on things.
I don't know why you're so angry with me right now.
What are you talking about? I'm not angry. You're angry.
I'm not angry.
You just say you're not, but you are. Just admit it.
You are taking your Donna anger out on him, and it needs to stop.
I don't have Donna anger.
Oh, like hell you don't. And if you don't admit that to yourself, I'll slap the taste out of your mouth too.
People with a very firm idea of who they think they are do not like to be challenged by other people's idea of them. If you, for example, see yourself as strong, steady, firm, and resilient, you may resent being thought of, or even consider the possibility of being, vulnerable and sensitive. If you see yourself as tough and mighty, you may avoid participating in activities that may risk exposing a side of yourself you do not like. Many Uttara Phalguni men see themselves as highly masculine, which is not only one of the reasons they do not like to explore their emotional side, but is also one of the reasons they resent having to go to psychologists. And in these cases, they only do so as a last resort, because they find that their neglected mental condition have become so debilitating that their only choice is to seek out the help of a mind doctor. So another reason why this hand puppet technique may work very well for Uttara Phalguni men is that the psychological distance is helpful for them in exploring their own emotions. If you're afraid that you may discover things about yourself that may threaten your self-image, then by projecting those emotions onto something external may give you a safe way to explore your own emotions without the threat of destroying your own mentally created identity. The sun represents a fixed identity, and solar individuals are very much attached to their own carefully developed mental identities. Again, Uttara Phalguni differs from the other Adityas because it rules over the noon sun according to some sources, and so it rules over the perceivable worlds, and the natives of this nakshatra have dominion over the perceivable world. Uttara Phalguni also mostly exists within Virgo, whose opposite is the invisible Pisces, that relates to the mysteries of the 12th house. Where Uttara Phalguni struggles is in the darkness, is in exploring the dark aspects of their own selves. The movie Falling Down is an interesting example of this lack of self-awareness, as Uttara Phalguni native Michael Douglas is himself struggling with his own mental health issues. But he has projected this onto the outside world, and he has convinced himself that everything outside of him is a problem. Society is a problem. The government is a problem. And not once does he consider that he could be to blame for the life that he has. The ending scene is rather iconic because the viewer witnesses his dawning self-awareness when he looks into the camera and sincerely considers for the first time that his own perception of self, his own self-concept, may actually be false and that he himself could be the problem.
Turn around on yourself. Now let's go meet some nice policemen. They're good guys. Come on, let's go.
I'm the bad guy?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
The sign of Virgo can in some ways be considered the most emotionally neutral sign, as it is the debilitation of Virgo and exaltation of Mercury. To understand the role that Venus plays in emotions, we can consider it in the following ways. Venus is a teacher, a guru, a philosopher, and a priest, much like Jupiter, but in a different way. The same way that the Sun is the soul and Jupiter is the philosopher of the soul, as Jupiter relates to spirituality, Moon is emotions and Venus is the philosopher of emotions. Whereas the Moon experiences emotions, Venus is good at understanding emotion. Now, it is said of Arjuna, one of the most important figures of the Mahabharata, that he was born under Uttara Phalguni, and in fact, one of the many names of Uttara Phalguni is said to be Arjunis, a name which refers to Arjuna. This relationship serves to again show the level of masculinity that exists within this nakshatra. As Arjuna was an archer, and in fact considered the best archer in the narrative, so talented was he in the art of archery that he challenged Lord Shiva in a game of archery. Lord Shiva himself is regarded as the most phallic of the Trimurti, as he embodies an entire half of reality, where Shakti, his feminine counterpart, embodies the other half. Lord Shiva is seen as a figure so phallic that not only does he penetrate through time and creation, he is also not bound nor restricted by time nor creation. One quote reads as follows: Lord Shiva was so satisfied with Arjuna that he said, "O Phalguna, I am pleased with you, for no one can rival your prowess. There is no Kshatriya who is equal to you in courage and patience. O sinless one, your strength and prowess almost equal mine. Behold me, O bull of the Bharata race." Shiva was so pleased that he gave Arjuna one of the most powerful weapons in creation, a Pashupatastra. And in general, weapons, whether swords or guns or arrows, are all indicative of masculinity within stories. Sight is of course also an indication of masculinity and its penetrative quality. Arjuna's sight, his ability to see, was described as so very focused, so penetrating, and operating like a light in a tunnel that it could see its target from far away and undistracted from anything to his left or his right. It is interesting because the male consciousness is also described in these terms. Whereas female consciousness is described as holistic, focusing on many relevant parts of a situation simultaneously, the male consciousness is described in terms of tunnel vision, only focusing intensely on one thing at a time, which is why this nakshatra excels at activities related to perception, as it is the midday sun that perceives things, but it struggles with seeing things holistically, and is also not good at perceiving invisible things or internal things. Now, to go along with this discussion on sight, it is common for men of the sun nakshatras, and even some women of the sun nakshatras, to have relatively close-set eyes. And in physiognomy, this is suggestive of individuals that are more focused on detail and that see things straight ahead, much like the tunnel vision we were discussing earlier. In face reading, it is also related to tunnel vision, as well as with people who are more focused on the trees than they are the forests. On the other hand, wide-set eyes are often seen on women, and particularly we see Pisces women with wide-set eyes, suggesting that they tend to see the bigger picture and their vision is more holistic, focusing on the forest over the trees. Wide-set eyes are also related to people who possess an understanding of symbolism, as they are good at connecting seemingly unrelated things together, whereas people with close-set eyes may not be as good at that. Close-set eyes are often associated with analysis, whereas wide-set eyes are often associated with synthesis. Analysis involves breaking down a complex idea or object into smaller parts to understand its individual components and how they relate to each other, while synthesis combines separate elements or components to form a coherent whole, often creating something new. Analysis is often seen as more masculine, whereas synthesis is more feminine. Now, dreams and symbolism are something else that we find that terrorize Sanakshatra natives, which makes sense because dreams and symbolism relate to the more emotional, more intuitive side of reality. In many of these works, we find Uttara Phalguni natives very attached to and fascinated by their dreams, but more so fascinated by the fact that they struggle to completely make sense of them. One of the most important elements in the series The Sopranos with James Gandolfini's were of course his many dreams that gave the watcher the impression that there was something deeper going on underneath them. Dreams that he struggled to decipher and for which he again required the assistance of an individual who embodied the feminine aspect of reality, a woman, his psychologist. It's interesting to consider how much the Uttara Phalguni male calls to himself these mystical experiences, or in general how much he is a magnet for these emotional aspects of reality, despite not understanding them. For example, many Uttara Phalguni and Sanakshatra men struggle to fully understand women, and yet Uttara Phalguni in many ways is seen as the most attractive nakshatra by women. It is as if women in general, the more feminine side of reality, feel called to the Uttara Phalguni male, as the Uttara Phalguni male represents a very masculine and stable and phallic quality that the feminine half wishes to unite itself to. The different elements of the zodiac excel at different aspects of spirituality, but the earth element is specifically related to magic, as magic is often defined by the ability to manipulate physical reality through intangible means, or observable reality through invisible means. Now, the earth signs are generally speaking the best at manipulating physical reality, as even Mercury itself, being an earth planet, is a planet directly related to manipulating physical reality. The airy entities of the astral and celestial worlds require physical vessels in order to operate within the terrestrial plane. This is essentially the value of temples and of churches, as these are examples of physical structures that man needs to build in order to receive celestial energy and to diffuse it within the terrestrial plane. Interestingly enough, it is said of the human body that it is the bride of Christ, and from this we extrapolate that the body is the bride of the beings of the celestial, as earth is passive to heaven, which is masculine in comparison to it. An individual with many earth signs, with Mercury prominent in their chart, who is overall very grounded, is actually the natural pair for astral or celestial entities, as he or she, on account of their earthiness, becomes compatible to their divinity, and this is one way of considering the virgin symbolism of the sign of Virgo. Of course, one thinks of the Virgin Mary, who owing to her piety, but also to her terrestrial nature, was compatible enough with celestial beings that she was literally impregnated by them, as her earthiness with their astral nature is again a natural pair. Uttara Phalguni is of course the ideal partner nakshatra, a nakshatra that embodies so well one half of reality that they become very attractive and therefore magnetic to the opposite half of reality. The men of Uttara Phalguni are seen as embodying the masculine half of reality well enough that the feminine half seeks them out and even submits to them, which is why ideally this nakshatra rules over Earth seamlessly through astral and celestial means. Going back to the stories of Scrooge, we return to the men who had no connection to their emotional side, and now find that the forces powered by these emotional sides have risen up to torment him, and their one desire is to change the Uttara Phalguni male. Their objective is to trigger within the Uttara Phalguni male a connection to his own soul, to his own emotions, so that he can fully understand the error of his ways and redeem himself. The theme of change is prominent in the Scrooge movies, owing to the level of fixity, solidity, and stubbornness of the Uttara Phalguni native, who is not interested in bending or changing their perspective. These stories really go to show the level of stubbornness or overall hardness that exists within the Uttara Phalguni native, a heart so hard that really only the most extreme experiences like being haunted or suffering from panic attacks are enough to really force him to look within himself before he destroys himself.
Now remember, Pinocchio, be a good boy, and always let your conscience be your guide.
I would like to speak of the story of Pinocchio, which also ties into the overall picture. Of course, the original story was written by Carlo Collodi, who not only was an Uttara Phalguni moon, but had his Ketu in Kritika, and we will speak of Kritika shortly. The story of Pinocchio ties into the overall theme that we are discussing because Pinocchio, a little bit like Scrooge, was originally described in the book very negatively and completely lacking in empathy and the ability to understand others or even himself in a deep way. Pinocchio essentially had no soul or had no connection to his soul, much like the other Uttara Phalguni examples discussed here. Originally, Pinocchio was described as imp or mischievous and devilish, and overall lacking in a moral compass. Of course, whenever Pinocchio gave himself over to his lower nature, particularly in the form of telling lies, his nose would grow, showing that he is losing the battle of his own soul and allowing terrestrial reality to climb on top of him. But in the end of the tale, when he finally chooses virtue and truth, which philosophically includes love, as truth and love are the same thing, as the one is created by the other and the other is the completeness of the one, he earns himself a soul. To tie this in, I would like to explore another symbolism that is important when discussing the soul and its relationship to matter. I would like to make reference to the pentagram in order to continue. In esoteric circles, the pentagram facing upwards is seen as a good symbol, as it symbolizes the dominion of the soul, which is again both truth and love, over the elements and over the terrestrial plane. This differs from the sensationalized satanic pentagram, which is the inversion of this, showing the dominance of the elements in the terrestrial plane over the soul, over truth, and over love. Man is meant to dominate over the terrestrial plane. It is said in various texts that the material plane is meant to obey the every command of man. But the problem is that the everyday man is in a fallen state where he has given himself over to dishonesty, to cowardice, to lust, and to all other vices. And for this reason, the everyday man is less like the upright pentagram presiding over the elements and is more so like the downward facing pentagram where the elements have dominion over him. Only the man that adheres to truth, whose nature is also that of love, only he can dominate over the terrestrial plane. Of course, we see this in Pinocchio, as whenever his nose grows, this is showing him becoming more and more under the subjugation of matter, losing the battle of his soul, and losing his place as the king of the earthly plane. The growth of his nose can also be seen as a phallic symbol, but in a negative sense. It can symbolize young men losing control over their sexuality and projecting their sexuality foolishly into the earthly plane, which is the main way in which men lose power over themselves and basically allow their soul to be enchained by the demonic energies of the earthly plane, who only become demonic because he has allowed himself to fall. Of course, Pinocchio's nose growing is to emphasize again how corrupt and how perverted the young man is and is allowing himself to become, as sexual corruption is often seen as the root of sin. The story of Pinocchio is relevant here because it can also show us what can happen to the Uttara Phalguni male if he loses connection to his soul. The dance of Shiva and Shakti, or in this case specifically Shiva and Kali, can also depict this. It shows us again that for man to truly have dominion over creation, he must be calm, he must be truthful, he must be loving, and hold on to the serpent of his sexuality, not allow his own neuroticism or sinful nature to provoke the serpent. His wielding of his own serpent is what eventually causes creation to submit to him and to fall to his knees. The same way Shakti and Kali recognize Shiva as their supreme lord and submit to him. This painting may seem like a dominating of the feminine over the masculine, but owing to Shiva's stillness, the feminine in this case fails to fully do so. She fails to fully dominate him. The various severed heads that Mother Kali holds can also serve to symbolize men that have given themselves over to their demonic side, and owing to this, have allowed themselves to be consumed and destroyed by the evil of the terrestrial plane when it is not dominated by light. The fact that Shiva continues to be light and continues to be calm, despite Kali sitting on top of him, is again symbolic of his power. His head is not severed because he has not lost control of himself. His head is not severed because he is still glowing with the light of his soul. The feminine half of creation often emasculates and otherwise embarrasses and dominates over the everyday male because the everyday male has no understanding of his anima. But it is the path of Uttara Phalguni to eventually understand his anima well enough that she willingly submits to him and he becomes his consort. In this way, he also dominates over all of creation and creation submits to him and he attains to godhood. Men who have their souls so buried under the elements to the point of being lost are like mere animals that are blown about by the wind, and such men and women are more easily made victim of curses and witchcraft because their psychic side, their soul side, has no proper defenses against curses. What separates a man from a mere animal is a man's ability to direct himself. But when man loses his soul and devolves more and more to the level of a mere animal, he not only is not in control of himself, but he is also directed by the elements, the earth, the seasons, the weather, the wind, with no resistance to it and no ability to command it, which is meant to be his cosmic rights. To birth oneself into godhood, one must marry within oneself one's cosmic masculine and one's cosmic feminine, to then be born once again, complete, a god. What is so interesting about these Uttara Phalguni tales is the amount of mystical experiences that they seem to experience. Uttara Phalguni is a nakshatra that is very sensitive to these experiences because they either are haunted and tormented by them or they rule over them and control them.
I have seen her rise frae her bed, throw her nightgown upon her, unlock her closet, take forth paper, fold it, write upon it, read it, afterwards seal it and again return to bed, yet all this while in a most fast sleep. Lo, Doctor, here she comes. Observe her. Stand close.
You see, her eyes are open.
Aye, but their sense is shut.
What is it she does now? Look how she rubs her hands.
Oh, it's an accustomed action with her, to seem thus, washing her hands. Who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him?
Do you mark that?
They are either victims of mystical experiences or, as Claire Noct explored in her video, mystical experiences and mystical beings willingly submit to them. Even though Uttara Phalguni is not traditionally associated with magical powers and magic in general, it is still an interesting nakshatra for magic because it teaches us how to become kings on Earth and essentially rule over beings both visible and invisible. Of course, it is said of Aryaman that he presides over the ancestors, and because there are ancestors that are elevated to the level of deities, it is as if Uttara Phalguni has the potential to be seen as a kingly figure among beings of the invisible realm as well. But for this, they must connect themselves and unite themselves to the more emotional, intuitive, and feminine side of reality, to connect themselves to love and not allow themselves to give in to their lower nature, and also not allow themselves to give in to coldness and overly rely upon the intellect and overly rely upon logic. In my Kritika video, I made reference to two themes, one being that of the vampire angel, who was the vampire who was cursed with a soul, and the other was Beauty and the Beast. Now, with Claire Noct's extensive research on the story, we now know that the narrative of Beauty and the Beast is more in line with Punarvasu and Murla than it is with Kritika. But here we can see a little bit of the reasoning behind my having included Kritika for Beast in my original video. Beast in some ways can be seen as a cold and callous figure who himself was disconnected from his own soul. He was rude and mean and arrogant, but eventually was redeemed through love and won back his soul owing to this realization and the change that followed. But the story of Beauty and the Beast, as Claire Noct explains it, is more fitting with Punarvasu, owing to Jupiter and the perversions and corruptions that come from Jupiter's excess, which then necessitates the assistance of a burning and purifying element to free him.
The elders conjured the perfect punishment for me. They restored my soul.
What, they were all out of boils and blinding torment?
When you become a vampire, the demon takes your body, but it doesn't get your soul. That's gone. No conscience, no remorse. It's an easy way to live. You have no idea what it's like to have done the things I've done. And to care.
In that video, I also talked about the vampire Angel. Angel was played by the Kritika native David Boreanaz, and he was himself originally cruel and calculating, again, callous and selfish, and of course soulless, who really had no understanding of the impact of his actions towards others, as he himself had no connection to his own soul, until he was cursed with one.
It hurts, yes. Good. It will hurt more. Where am I? You don't remember. Everything you've done for 100 years. In a moment you will. The face of everyone you killed. Our daughter's face. They will haunt you. and you will know what true suffering is. Killed? I don't...
Then he was wrecked with guilt and shame. So really, with all the sun nakshatras, we observe this early state of being, which is a fully developed masculine side, but with a frail and neglected feminine side that is then redeemed with a forceful interaction with the feminine principle. We see men in danger of completely losing their souls. We see men in danger of completely giving themselves over and being consumed by the dark aspects of creation that become demonic, owing to the fact that he has lost his light, and how he is rescued and redeemed by the forces of love. Thank you for watching my video, and thank you to my patrons for supporting me. To support me, please join my Patreon or purchase my books. Links will be provided in the description of the video.